every nation, there are heroes whose names we know. But there are also heroes whose stories are whispered, whose sacrifices are unrecorded, whose courage shines in places where cameras seldom reach. But before sunrise, before the nation's tears, before the world demands their strength, barangay officials, men and women of quiet bravery, are already out there, serving, facing, carrying every complaint, every crisis, every cry for help. Not because they are paid to do so, but because their hearts refuse to walk away. January 12, 2024, a moment that could have been a farewell, became a new beginning. Board member Tining Martinez, in his final term, was called to lead the Liga ng Mga Barangay, Cebu Province. He did not step forward with promises. He stepped forward with purpose. Because for him, public service is not a chapter. It is a lifelong vow. A vow born in the streets of Bugo City in northern Cebu, in communities that shaped his character, in people who taught him what it means to serve with humility. The destiny carried him further. On March 18, he was entrusted with the voice of a nation, elected Secretary General of the Liga ng Mga Barangay sa Pilipinas. Suddenly, his responsibility was no longer provincial. It was national. It was historic. He was now carrying the dreams, struggles, and future of every barangay in the Philippines. For decades, barangay leaders worked with time against them. 3 years, 3 short years, barely enough to begin, never enough to finish. And so begun the fight for Republic Act 12232, a battle not for power, but for continuity, for projects that needed time, for reforms that needed stability, for communities that needed laws to adapt to the real struggles, with fierce opposition surrounding them. The Liga, led by National President Jessica G.D., the National Executive Board, and Secretary General Tining Martinez stood unmoving. They were criticized, misunderstood, attacked, but the truth stood taller. Barangay leaders deserved the time to fulfill the promises they made to their people. And so, RA 12232 was passed, signed by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., upheld by the Supreme Court. The barangay was no longer a footnote in government. It became a pillar. But loss and victories are never the true measure of a leader. Real leadership is tested when everything falls apart. On September 15, 2025, Board member Tining Martinez authored and passed a measure to elevate Cebu's disaster response, strengthening the Cebu Provincial Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office into a full department. He did not know that fate had already taken aim, because only days later, on September 29, northern Cebu was struck by 6.9 magnitude earthquake, so powerful, it fractured the land and broke the hearts of thousands. Homes gone, streets destroyed, families displaced, fear everywhere. And in the darkness of that night, while the earth still trembled, a familiar figure emerged. By 11 p.m., when many were still searching for safety, Board Tining was already in the ruins. No entourage, no cameras, no speeches, just a leader returning home to stand with his people. He confronted those who lost everything. He organized relief where roads were impassable. He brought assurance to a province shaken not only by the ground, but by the fear of being forgotten. And when darkness swallowed the north, the Liga ng Mga Barangay brought light, financial aid, solar lamps for families without electricity, support for barangays that refuse to surrender their despair, because in the face of devastation, service becomes sacred. But calamity has no patience. Just when Cebu began to rise, Typhoon Tino dragged the province back into danger. Floods swept communities, supplies ran out, hope thinned. But again, he stepped forward, bringing drinking water to families stranded for days, coordinating distribution where roads were impassable, mobilizing assistance when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm everyone. It was not grand. It was not broadcasted. It was human. It was service. As 2026 dawns, we look back not just at the hardships endured, but at the strength revealed. We learned that resilience is not built by structures alone. It is built by people, by barangay captains who never abandoned their posts, by barangay councilors who walked through flood waters to check on residents, by tanods who stayed awake through the storm so others could sleep, and by leaders who stood with communities long after the cameras were gone. This is our calling: to serve, to protect, to persevere, to lead. In this 2026, as we continue to be pillars of resilience and inclusive governance, we remain united in supporting the Liga ng Mga Barangay sa Pilipinas and in helping pass the Magna Carta for barangay officials. Now, we stand before a new horizon, a future that demands courage, unity, and vision. And at its center stands a mission greater than any one of us: the Magna Carta for barangay officials, a law that does not simply acknowledge your service, but it honors, a law that protects your welfare, supports your work, and secures your dignity. Because those who carry the people should never be left unprotected. Those who sacrifice daily deserve a system that strengthens them. Those who are the first to respond must never be the last to be recognized. This is not just a law, it is justice, it is respect, it is overdue. And so today, we gather not just to close a year, but to celebrate a legacy of bravery, a legacy of unity, a legacy of service that endured earthquake, storm, and struggle. We are not leaders by title. We are leaders by choice, by duty, by heart. This is who we are. This is the Liga ng Mga Barangay, Cebu Province. This is our story. This is our fight. This is our future. And together, we will continue to rise.